Hello and welcome to another episode of SCP Cafe. This is 2019, Week 7, and allow me to be the first person to congratulate the Cliche Contest winners. I'm your host, Blue Soul, SCP Wiki moderator, chat operator, subreddit moderator, author, loving husband, dog petter, Tottenham Hotspur supporter. What else are we throwing in there this week? Big surprise revealer. I'm going to do that today too. But first, back where we started, the Cliche Contest. We have about 5 hours and 37 minutes at the time of this recording left in voting. I'm calling it now. We're close enough to call some of these races as they stand right now. As we kind of discussed in previous weeks, the contest was split into 3 categories of anomaly cliches, story cliches, and both. So we have 3 winners to crown. In category 1, the anomaly cliches, SCP-4205, which has managed to get almost to plus 500 since it was put out there. It's gone through a number of revisions, even since we covered it just a couple of weeks ago on the pod, and it looks incredible these days. So big congratulations to Wodenaz for being the high skip of the contest at plus 475 for SCP-4205 in the eyes of the beholder. In category 2, story cliches, not as many entrants in here, but one that we did cover and one that was one of my picks. SCP-3597, Maladroit, written by AIS Mallard, at plus 63 at the time at this recording, well ahead of the other entrants in category 2 and our clear winner there. For category 3, a bit of a closer race, but third time lucky. This was also my pick. SCP-4511, Swine God, your winner in Category 3, Anomaly and Story Cliches. Big congratulations to Rounderhouse and Dr. Annoying Dog. So those are your winners. All told, this thing put out a lot of good content. From a staff perspective, we were a little scared of this contest. This contest was something that, from a base premise, we are not super thrilled at the idea of, let's encourage a lot of cliches to get posted. That'll go well. But you guys have proven us wrong. We appreciate that. And big congratulations, Wodenaz, AIS Mallard, Rounderhouse, Dr. Annoying Dog, our winners of the 2019 Cliche Contest. Now, I did also describe myself as big surprise revealer today. And that's true. I've been teasing something that's in the works for the last couple of weeks. It is running a little longer than I expected through no fault of my own this time, I'll mention. But I am going to talk about it. I'm going to reveal it on a special Wednesday edition of SCP Cafe. I'm going to do my big reveal, and hopefully this is something that is something that's really I don't even know how to put it into words without spoiling it early. I've put a ton of time into this for the past almost 2 months straight now, and it is getting closer to fruition every day, but we're not quite there yet. But I do want to get the word out, get some hype going, and with any luck, I'll be able to put it into full effect probably within a month. I was saying, if I would have said 0 to 2 weeks this time around, it's not going to be ready in 2 weeks. I'm fairly confident it would take something approaching a miracle to be ready in 2 weeks. So that's probably not happening. I'm actually going to record that after the show today, and I will put that out there on the podcast on Wednesday. Speaking of bonus content, while I'm thinking about it, we are going to do something new very soon. I will be bringing on a guest. I will be bringing on SCP Wiki member Pedantique to go over their 001 proposal. I've been thinking about it. This is something I think I want to do. Anytime we have a 001 proposal that is anything resembling well received, I want to bring the author on and go over their work and see what they were trying to put out there, and just sort of go into it, deconstruct it, and really try to analyze it from a writing perspective and from a lore perspective, whatever makes sense. But 001 proposals are special to me. They represent to me the capstone of your efforts on the site. I think a lot of people feel that way. They are normally sort of a showcase of your abilities as an author. So I want to celebrate that. I've already talked with Pedantique. We are still trying to hammer out a time. That's my fault, honestly. I was hoping to squeeze it in this week, but it hasn't happened. So very soon. And I apologize that I didn't bring it up during last week's pod, but I didn't even see it. And honestly, even if I had seen it, I've gone through it pretty thoroughly. And to be honest, it would have merited its own show anyway. It's quite large. It works in ways that I've not seen out of a 001 or really hardly any works on the site. And it is worth some discussion with the author themselves. So that's the plan. Look for that coming soon. Not sure quite when we're going to squeeze it in. It's going to be between me and them trying to hammer out a time to get it done. But yeah, that's one thing we're gonna start doing going forward, is all the 001 proposals are going to get a show. Hopefully I can bring the author on and we can go over their work. But if not, I will, go in, really get into it, and try to recap it and give my thoughts on it. Now, speaking of recaps, well, that's kind of what we're here for. So let's get into it. Week 7, there were, I want to say, 22 skips in scope this week. I had my 5 picked out Thursday afternoon, and then something happened. Thursday night, a couple of really good skips got posted. That's very, very rude of these people to put these after I've made my decisions. But they did, and I read them actually just now, and made a last minute substitution of one of my 5. So this was already really difficult. Like, the way that I do this is I basically pull up all of the skips posted in a week, and the first 5 get dragged into another window, the first in their 5 tabs, and going out after that, anything that I like more than one of those 5, I'll close a tab of those 5 and move the new skip into that 5. So I repeat that until I've gone through all of them. So normally by the time I'm done with like 12, 14 of these, it's getting really difficult to make these calls. And it's even more difficult when you thought you've already made all your tough decisions, and then you get a couple more of these at the last possible minute to review and include. But one of them was clear cut, better than my last one on. So I have 5 to cover this week, and including 1J. And given that there was only 1J this week, you can probably make your own conclusion there on which one we're going to cover. As a matter of fact, we're going to get into it right now. SCP-8231J, titled Superflying T-Rex, and this is it's claimed as a co-write between Roger and Salman Corbett. That would be a neat trick, because I haven't seen Sal around on the site in ages. But so it is. Roger wants to give him credit. I'll allow it. So we have our item number, and then for the object class we have Keter. That's struck through, and instead, in all caps, we have Super Apollyon. We have procedures that are all of 2 sentences. It says SCP-8231J is kept in my lab with my toys. Only I can play with him, and he's my friend now. And for a description, we have SCP-8231J is the coolest T-Rex. It has wings for arms and likes to fight crime and stomp hard. It can also talk and think because I made it very smart. Sometimes it gives me piggyback rides. By Researcher James, age 10. Now, if you're trying to place Researcher James, the one you're most likely thinking of is the butt ghost. That is SCP-789J, and that one was all Salmon Corbett. The thing is, I actually had to pull it up I wanted to see what it was rated at these days. It's at plus 675, and that's by researcher James, age 11. Interesting. 8231J, James is only age 10. And, oh, by the way, that was the entire skip, the procedures and description. But there is these addendums, these audio logs, and there are 3 of them. And sort of attached to them off to the right, we have a black and white picture of a stone floor. It's an interior of I'm not sure, some sort of very tall roofed, thick wooden lattice structure on the inside, and stone walls, it looks like, on the outside. And it says, "My lab, I make dinosaurs and Truckosaurus and all kinds of stuff." And we have the first audio log. I'm going to give you the first 6 lines. It's James says, "Wake up, wake up, wake up, Mr. T-Rex." And our skip says, "What? Where am I? Oh my God, what happened to me?" And James says, "I made you." And the skip says, "Where's my wife? Oh no, no, no." And it retches and says, "What am I?" James says, "Dinosaurs don't get married, stupid, even if they've got some people in them. Also regular lizards. I found them outside last year at school." And the skip says, "This is impossible. How long has it been? I can't remember her face. Jesus, help me." This whole thing is like this. This is terrifying. This is a joke only because it features researcher James, and it's a nod to Salmon Corbett. This is horrifying. As far as horror, this is the scariest fucking skip of the week, and it's not even close. It is thoroughly disturbing on many, many levels. And the remainder of the logs go into James trying to play with the skip, and the skip very much being some sort of person trapped inside the body of a dinosaur of some sort, but a very poor attempt at one. And it's God, this thing really bothers the hell out of me. It's horrible. It's man, it's a +1. It's a begrudging +1. I told Roger, thanks, I hate it. I don't want to get too into this, not only because the dialogue is you deserve to read it, but I've kind of buried the lead on what you can expect from the work. But honestly, partly because this just bothers the hell out of me. This is the sort of horror that bothers me on a deep personal level. So, Roger, well done. I absolutely hate this skip. +1. Okay, moving on to something altogether more serious. SCP-3721. This is titled Obsolete Weapons System, and it was written by Uranium Empire. We have an object class of Keter and a threat level of Red. I didn't realize how controversial these threat levels were until I really got into the forums and started seeing prominent members with very strong opinions on them. I have no strong opinion either way on them, honestly. We have a full-width image of what looks like an office building with relatively modern, with nice glass windows all along the face that is visible to us. And unfortunately for me, this next caption is in German, and it's one of these German words where they glued together 9 or 15 or so words and said, yeah, that's a word. Of course it is. In any event, whatever this thing is, it's located in Stuttgart. And it says that this is where the -1 is located, presumably in this office building, or maybe it is this office building. We have 3 flagpoles outside and a couple of other little odds and ends like you might normally see in an office building all around it. We have quite a few procedures here, and the first thing you notice is that it says that resources that we had formerly allocated to the -1 study are to be permanently allocated towards its containment. And we have containment procedures that discuss a Faraday cage, that attenuates radio waves. That is what a Faraday cage does. And to this end, Mobile Task Force Theta 18, and this is titled Anti-Semitics Division, that's interesting, has been tasked with sabotaging Associated Obscuricorps communication stations as they are discovered. Obscuricorps is a GOI having to do basically with the Nazi regime and their, let's call it their esoteric weapons program. It's a bit more than a weapons program. Think to like Men Who Stare at Goats type stuff, and you get an idea. Areas targeted by the -2 are to be sprayed with aerosolized amnestics. An abnormal cover story 10 meteor strike is to be disseminated to news media. And due to the severity of the -2 strikes, the gaslight protocol is recommended for direct witnesses. That is a link to a tale titled A Man at the Top of His Profession. We go to the description that says that 3721 consists of a spotter device, -1, and a rudimentary satellite, -2, which compose a kinetic bombardment system developed by the Obscuricorps for long-range strikes against the Allied powers. So, orbital weapons platform. It's pretty cool. So, the -1 is described as a series of mainframe computers connected to an array of printers and esoteric radio equipment, and it processes information relating to geopolitical events and uses the information to instruct the -2 on when to fire. It can analyze ambient radio waves and compare them to the -2's movements and pass over such transmissions to -2 at the -1's discretion. And here's an interesting line. Additionally, surviving documentation suggests -1 controls a binary setting that inflicts a continuous sense of pain in -2 while activated. This thing was described as a satellite, and yet we have something that inflicts pain in it. So that's that's something. We discuss that everything is automatically recorded by the -1, but recordings are encrypted through a series of randomly selected patterns, and to date, we've only decrypted one of these patterns, and -2 is now described as a cylindrical satellite in asynchronous orbit with Earth. Its surface is covered in an array of ceramic panels, most of which have been either broken off or been reconstituted in order to repair internal systems. And underneath -2's frame is a series of mechanical arms that assist in operations. And when it was first launched, it had been fitted with an internally adjustable thrust system, self-repair equipment, and a magazine containing 6 tungsten poles and a vestigial radio receiver. And as expected of long-term low Earth orbit, it has suffered extensive wear, which it has attempted to repair with surrounding space debris. And despite having this radio receiver and being nominally, apparently at least somewhat intelligent, or at least capable of feeling pain, it cannot perceive any object further than 30 meters from its position. So we describe the firing as being managed by -2, and it involves breaking ammunition out of orbit. So this is sort of a common trope in future sci-fi for orbital strikes, that you would drop they said a tungsten rod, and that's usually what it is. Just it doesn't have to be anything fancy. It just has to have a lot of mass. So that is apparently how this thing works. And if the magazine for -2 is empty, or its structural integrity is sufficiently weakened, it will go and actively search for orbital debris with which to reconstruct itself, and otherwise, -2 will fire if its flight path takes it over a suspected population center regardless of nationality. So that is a little unusual for the Obscuricorps. We have a history section that is rather short, and it talks about when we first theorized it, that it existed, and found information out about it in 1945, and authorized capture, and it was fully secured in 1949, and only a few days later we managed to come up with containment procedures for it. We go from there to an analysis of recovered documentation, so hopefully we've got the manual for this thing. The documentation indicates that development began in 1940, and it was split between the aerospace and biology divisions of the Obscure Corps, headed by Doctors Wilfred Ackerman and Ava Zellweger. That's an important name. Keep that one in mind. It goes on to sort of talk about the initial engine designs and that they weren't going to be sufficient. We need a different approach, something more esoteric, and it was decided on an esoteric engine composed of beryllium bronze, and beryllium bronze is a link to SCP-1427 and human brain tissue. So think about that. We already know the thing's capable of feeling pain, and the first of these engines was built, implemented in 1943, and R-2's launch occurred on November 9th of 1943, flew over several Russian population centers, and it proceeded to fire upon 4 German population centers in the span of a day, and development of 3721 was immediately halted. Now, going back just a bit on Ava Zellweger, there is a footnote, this is footnote 4, and Ava is described as a Swiss neuroscientist on loan from the University of Basel. The work goes on to talk a little bit about Dr. Zellweger, that despite her status as project director, she was tightly managed by her superiors until her disappearance in October of 1943, and personal accounts would describe her as patient and cordial, if increasingly withdrawn as the project continued. So she disappeared October 6th. The launch happened November 9th. We have from here decrypted communications, and this is broken out into 6 transmission logs between -1, which is referred to as the controller, and -2, which is referred to as the planter. And all of the communication is written in a pidgin of German and Yiddish, and that's Pidgin. Not written in a pidgin. Anyway, we have several transmission logs here, and they go all the way from 1949 to 2009. One thing I do want to put out there in advance when you do read this work, there are some racial slurs that do make sense for the time that this is set in, and additionally, given the actual meat of what we're dealing with the planter and the controller. Up at the initial communication log from 1949, we have the controller, which is the office building, the supercomputer within the office building. Very clearly, really putting down our planter. It says, "I want to be clear with you. You are blind. You are weak. You are helpless. You are wasting away in the sky, and I am here on Earth, improving it more than your malformed fingers ever could. Without me, you are a hunk of metal that bit the hands that fed it. I am the only person that cares about something like you. Is that clear, David?" And then it says the pain function is switched off. So they were instilling pain in, we'll call him David, for presumably the entire time they were giving that tirade. And all of the controller sort of monologues here for a bit. I'm sorry for yelling, but sometimes I need to. Sometimes you need it to keep our relationship stable. And this is all very, very, very accurate. Actually, really compelling. Abusive relationship sort of dialogue that you would have the abuser doing everything, apologizing, blaming the other person, letting them know how lucky they are in instances, and we go to finally the planter's the only one that the only line in this little excerpt that we have is the planter replying, "I am not your damn weapon, Ava." And so that's that. Ava went missing. She is our controller. She is somehow part of this supercomputer. Pain function is switched back on, and it says 5.5 years. That's rather impressive. For what? You won't die. In fact, and then the log ends. It says encryption shifted to pattern 83, and I think that's actually a kind of a cool way to do this. They indicate that this is sort of a rolling set of encryption patterns, and this is actually a common phenomenon, particularly in Russia. You would have these number stations and rolling encryption uh, on radio broadcasts. So we have several more logs, and it goes more into this one is entirely from the planter's perspective, from David's perspective, and it is this dialogue is all outstanding. As it keeps going, and as you see more from the planter and the controller, as time goes on, they become more cordial, more understanding, almost a bit of Stockholm Syndrome going on. And by the end of this, they're laughing at each other. They still, the pain function still gets switched on and off for, not even maybe occasional punishment, like sort of mild, more joking. And by the end of it, we have, them sort of singing and calling each other dear, and more to the point, they don't remember their own names. And we end this work with a line from the planter. And actually, I'll go back a couple of lines. The controller, Ava, says, "So we have changed, and for what?" And David says, "I don't know and I don't care. Nazis had their reasons, but most of them are dead. If you really want to, we can stop." And Ava says, "Yet you haven't." David says, "6.5 decades, you forget why you're angry. All I know is that I'm still angry." And that's where the article ends. I am glossing over quite a bit of dialogue because I don't want to read the whole thing, and I think exerting little bits of it might actually mislead to the point that it would be counterproductive. I wanted to kind of take a step back, though, and from a broad picture perspective of SCP-3721, I cannot help but see comparisons to 2721, and I'm not trying to insert any sort of I'm not trying to stir the shit here with regards to 2721. You're entitled to your opinion on it, but the fact of the matter is they have a lot of common ground. We have satellites that are possess a level of intelligence. There are two different entities involved in this that one comes to they sort of come to an understanding. One is a male, one's a female. There is a lot going on here. It's actually a very interesting callback to 2721. Given that this is 3721, I can't help but feel that it's at least somewhat intentional. And maybe it's just a total coincidence. But I kind of doubt it. And I don't think that's a knock against it. I could not help but make the comparison as I was kind of reading it, and that regardless of your opinion on it, the connections are there. I don't think they're a knock for or against, but when you compare and contrast them, I think it does add an interesting element to it. The work is really interesting to me. I feel as though I don't understand all of what's happening, and I'm okay with admitting that. I've never claimed to have all of the answers to all of the works, but what I do see is really powerful, compelling dialogue, and a potentially horrifying story going on in the background. These were scientists on loan. The Obscura Corps, as part of Nazi Germany at the height of World War II, was in here they're portrayed as very relentlessly brutal and capable of of a limitless amount of evil. And we can see creating an orbital weapon that is compelled potentially through pain to strike targets, and it did not initially work. There's a lot of interesting things going on. This is one of these I'm going to roll around in my head for a few days and just keep kind of thinking about it, because I don't think I have the whole story here. It's a +1 for me anyway. It's well built. It suits the wiki perfectly. I have no problems with it. It's technically solid, and I only regret that I don't think I fully appreciate everything that's going on. Um, and that's a difficult balance to strike because it's always, if you don't give your readers enough clues as to what's going on, you risk it being so obscure that you're the only person that gets it. But you also don't want to beat your readers over the head with the point. And I'm always willing to take fault for these that, perhaps I'm dumb. It certainly happened before, certainly won't be the last time. So in this instance, it says enough. I can get the gist of it. And there are quite a few links in the work as well to other articles that may actually lay out some of those things that would explain it for you. But I don't need those to say that I'm still intrigued by the work. It is solid enough to be a +1 on those merits alone. Moving on, SCP-4158, titled Big Charlie the Growing Cow, and this was written by Gleam64. This appears to be a first-time entry. So congratulations, this is your first skip. You're getting covered. So 4158, when you hit the page, first thing you notice is the picture, which is a little wider than average, and it's an odd picture. It is something flesh-colored and what looks to be quite tall. Given a couple of reference points, I would say it's about 15 feet tall and probably about 20 feet long, 4 legs, an eye, some nasty looking black hair on the top of its head, and a couple of ropey things hanging from the underside of it. Not an altogether pleasant looking thing, and the caption reads SCP-4158 during recovery. We have procedures that indicate it's to be kept in an 8 meter by 10 meter cell in the medium containment zone of Site-64, and the cell has a 5 meter trough on the east wall of the cell, and the skip is to be sheared of its excess mass and have its cell cleaned once every week, and x-rays are to be performed on the skip before and after shearing. The resulting meat is to be incinerated. So the skip is to be fed a raw diet of raw beef, hay, wood, and bricks. And constant monitoring is not necessary, though we must check it at least 3 times a day. And in a scenario where the growth is not regulated, the object class is to be reevaluated from Euclid. And the description is that our skip is a bovine-esque creature measuring 3.4 meters tall. So I was about right, yeah. And 5 meters long at the time of writing. Its skin is thin, appearing translucent and ripping easily. It's unpleasant. The skip is partially blind and has a bulbous head that lacks the features of a bovine, of which it shares its alleged lineage. The skip is sentient and docile, not acknowledging personnel during feeding or cleaning of its cell, and the skip does not produce excrement. And our gimmick here is that it is constantly growing in size and weight, and as such, its excess mass must be sheared off every week. Limiting its diet does not limit its growth, and the meat is actually not anomalous at all, but we are incinerating the meat out of an abundance of caution. And when the skip is not sheared of its excess mass, new features begin to form, including limbs, genitalia, and in rare cases, organs. And the anatomy and placement of these growths are random, and at its largest, the skip grew to be 8.5 meters tall and 9.8 meters long, featuring 7 legs, 4 stomachs, 2 penises, 5 testicles, and 3 tongues, before the Foundation disallowed further growth. And the testing was halted after the skip began showing evidence of neural tissue generation. There's a thought. So we found the skip in Canada. In 2004, Animal Control got calls about a big cow with mange roaming by the highway. Animal Control saw it, flipped out, called the cops. Foundation plant within the cops sent containment specialists to transport it. We amnesticed the Animal Control. Case was closed, reporting it as a cow with mange that we put down at the scene. And the skip was transported back to Site-64 with no resistance, and we tracked the origin of the skip to a slaughterhouse by the name of Butcher's Block, where one employee, Barney Mossman, and the manager, Jeff Fine, were found and taken into Foundation custody. One more employee was later found in his residence after calling in sick, and we have 3 interview logs, one with each of them. We have we have the first one with Barney, who is just described here as an employee, and he doesn't know much. Indicates that the cow's name is Big Charlie, and Charlie was there before Barney got there, and said, I know we feed it hay, but also it just eats whatever's around, like wood, bricks, and sometimes the other cows. And Barney only ever fed it, didn't really know anything about it, and apparently the person we really need to talk to would be Rory, the person that we found that had called in sick that day, because Rory cleans him and gives him checkups and stuff. So we have an interview with Rory, who indicates a little bit more information. They know a little bit more about it, that they bought a pregnant cow, and one day the calf just fell out of the mama cow, just ripped through its chest, didn't have an umbilical cord, and it wasn't moving, so we thought it was dead, and it also looked fucking disgusting. So we hauled it out. The next morning it had at some point woken up and tried to get in the barn, and we thought, well, this guy's not going to make it, but maybe somebody will want to buy him, scientific study or hell, a freak show. So we bring it inside about 9 years ago, and they tried to place an ad to get rid of it. Nobody wanted to buy this thing, so they decide to put the thing out of its misery, and got the cattle gun, put it between the eyes, pulled the trigger, and the bullet basically bounced off this thing's skull, and tried it again, and it broke the gun. Tried slitting its throat, and it barely bled. Tried cutting the throat open, and it didn't seem to affect it at all. We decided to try to butcher it right there where it stood, and it didn't even react, and when we were done, he was practically a skeleton. We wanted to get something out of this purchase, so we decided to just pack the meat in with the rest and hope no one would notice. It's a quality butcher shop, and noticed that a couple of days later, he'd grown back most of the meat that had been cut off of him. We tried to cut off some more and then tried feeding it to one of the guys, and he didn't notice it tasting different, so now we have a cow that eats anything in front of it and produces infinite meat. That's a pretty nice little perk when you're in the business of selling beef, I suppose. The other cows don't really like Big Charlie. If they get too close and Charlie gets too hungry, he'll eat them. But we don't really care because he produces enough meat to cover both of them. We've determined that Big Charlie is sterile, and no idea how it escaped our possession, and that Jeff Fine is the one we really need to talk to for more information. And this is where it kind of gets weird, because Jeff Fine is the owner of the company, and Jeff Fine is really... tell you what, let's back this up a little bit. He reiterates most of the other stories that we have so far. He reiterates the story of the cattle gun, and and he goes, we tried cutting him up where he stood. The next couple of days while we were waiting for him to die, we noticed that he had regrown himself, so we decided to accept his blessing. The interviewer says, okay. What were you doing on the night of December 12th, 2004 when the creature escaped? Jeff says, I was just praying. The interviewer says, to who, when, and where? And Jeff says, why do you need to know? He says, answer the question. Jeff says, to Big Charlie. Says, oh? I've done it every night since we received him. You heard what they said. He feels no pain. You can't kill him. He provides for us. He's our savior. So why do you think you would pray to him? I felt something when I was around him. I could tell he wanted to make this sacrifice for us. Ever since he tried to get into the barn after we threw him out like heartless bastard, I knew he cared for us. So I would open his pen, take off my clothes so that I was pure before him, lay down and receive his blessings. The interviewer says, how do you do that? And Mr. Fine says, I drink his blood. He doesn't need it, but his heart pumps and produces blood for us. And the interviewer says, how come you never told your friends about any of this? And Jeff says, I know that Charlie wouldn't like them. I've seen how he reacts when they're near him compared to me. He still provides for them, but I'm the only one who he allows to receive his personal blessings. And the interviewer's asking about the praying, like, has it worked? And he goes, no, Big Charlie doesn't just answer all prayers willy-nilly. He knows what's best for us. And he goes, so that's a no. He goes, how dare you question Big Charlie? He knows what's best for all of us. I'm done here. I don't need to keep answering questions like this. And so we get out of these interview logs, and we only have a little bit left. It says, it's not believed that the worshipping is due to any anomalous effect. It's suggested by a study of personnel showing no abnormal religious or ritual practices after working with the skip. And at this time, there seems to be no reason to discredit any of the claims made. The workers and cows that were in possession of the Butcher's Block slaughterhouse at the time were all administered amnestics. The slaughterhouse was closed under the pretense that it was due to a health code violation. The employees were arrested for malpractice. And the identity of the man that sold Jeff Fine the pregnant cow that birthed the skip is still unknown. End article. There's a lot to unpack here for being what's honestly a pretty short work. This does some things in a very interesting way, and this is sort of that new writer bonus of fresh eyes. They do things in a way that, we get so used to maybe a certain formulaic way of going about it. They're basically laying out, it can do all this stuff, and we've got these incredible stories from these people, but based on what we've seen, no, that's all exactly right. And not only is it exactly right, this thing might be, it might be exactly as advertised. It is more or less invulnerable. It produces an infinite supply of meat, given really any material at all. We don't explain any of that, and I think that works to this skip's credit. The dialogue is good, particularly for a first-time work. This is really good dialogue. I particularly like our last interview here with Jeff Fine, because it's one of these, you could take it in a couple of different ways. The way that I'm choosing to interpret this is that this dude is just a little bit nuts. He sees this thing as a messiah, but this thing might just be a really dumb cow that happens to be anomalous, and all of the crazy is just going on in this guy's head. I like that interpretation, and I like that it's open enough that you are able to make these judgment calls on what you think is actually going on in the work. This is a little underrated right now, I think, at plus 28. Has a lot of discussion about it, almost 40 different comments on the thread. I'm not going to get into any of those, but I like this. I think this is, for a first-time work, this is outstanding. This is a very easy +1 for me. Moving on. SCP-4818. This is titled I Need a Hero, written by Dr. Chandra. We have no image. In fact, I don't believe we have any image at all in the work. We do not. We have an object class of Euclid and procedures that indicate that it is kept in a standard humanoid containment unit in the low security wing of Site-17 with standard privileges and amenities contingent on its continued cooperation and good behavior. And in the event that it becomes hostile, it is to be subdued with the use of a 4 square meter sheet coated in commercially available Vantablack paint, modified to be fired from a net launcher, and held within a completely dark containment cell after being searched for any light-generating objects. And the skips released may be authorized by the head of anomalous humanoid psychology at Site-17 should their assessment deem the risk of further violence to be minimal. Interesting. Making a lot of precautions around light. And the skip is to be regularly assessed by an attaché from MTF Alpha 9 Last Hope and is permitted to engage in its training assignments in designated areas. So a little bit of a throwback skip here, maybe, the skip that is part of an MTF. We have a description that indicates that the skip is an adolescent female of mixed European and Middle Eastern descent, and any photons which make contact with the skip's skin can be induced to form photonic molecules. We have a footnote here that explains it is a phenomenon wherein proteins can be bonded together and exhibit behavior similar to regular matter despite not possessing any mass. Interesting. These photonic molecules that basically turn photons into a point mass that have they exist and have their matter without mass. We described this photonic matter a little bit. This matter does not break, scratch, tear, or deform under stress like regular matter, but it does gradually shed photons until it's entirely dissipated. The physical shocks have been demonstrated to accelerate this deterioration, and photonic constructs typically fade at a rate of 100 lumens per hour and dissipate completely upon reaching 0 lumens. 100 lumens is not a tremendous amount of light. That's actually pretty impressive. The skip is capable of restoring, maintaining, or increasing the luminosity of photonic constructs by maintaining skin contact. And at the time of recovery, the skip was only capable of generating small photonic jewels and figurines, as well as inflexible photonic armor over exposed skin. We go from here to a series of interviews, and it has to do with the skip and a researcher, Dr. Luna Valdez, who is, this starts with the skip being first brought in to the Foundation custody. And it's kind of sad because the skip indicates that she had it pretty rough in the initial capturing. Said your damn goons tackled me to the ground, tied me up in a sack, hauled me off in the back of a van for hours, locked me up in a dark cell, and then you show up all sweet asking if I want hot chocolate. That's how you brainwash prisoners, by having one of their keepers pretend to be nice so they'll start to trust him. And we basically, have to break the news. Like, sorry, we really didn't intend to do that. But the skip asks, how long are you going to keep me here? And Dr. Valdez says, well, most of our residents are here indefinitely, but it does depend on various, and this is sad. This is something that I haven't seen a lot of skips touch. When an anomalous human comes into Foundation custody, having this sort of dialogue of what happens to the family. This addresses that. This takes it head on. Basically, your parents will be led to believe that you've gone missing. And so we go from there to trying to understand the anomalous nature of her and how this all works. And she, basically creates a light-based figurine of Captain Marvel. And she indicates that this isn't all that impressive. She wants to actually get good enough to use her power effectively as an actual superhero. And the doctor goes, you got lucky getting assigned here. This is one of, if not the most comfortable sites for anomalous humanoids in our entire organization. There was another thing I passed over here for just a minute, where the doctor says to SCP-4818, as you might guess by your ID number, we have thousands of them in containment, and God knows how many there are in the wild. And the skip says, I thought I might be the only one, and I didn't think you guys were real. So I also like the idea, this sort of, I didn't think you guys were real in the context of the SCP Foundation within a work on the SCP Foundation wiki. That tickles me. Over the course of these interviews, the relationship between Dr. Valdez and the skip is, off to a rocky start. The doctor tries to introduce the skip to to some other skips to kind of get, to help them understand that they're not alone, that, you're not the only anomalous person around. But apparently they chose poorly, because the skip says, from my perspective, you brought in a trolley with mutated stillborn fetuses that started talking, then singing. Why the fuck would you do that? That's fucking terrible. So we, the doctor at the end of this says, I take full responsibility for the disastrous first attempt to integrate the skip into the Site-17's residential community. Now that's an interesting concept too, that there would be a residential community for these anomalous humanoids. It's something I haven't really given a lot of consideration to, but it makes sense in a way, but on the other side, this is like the cold, not cruel Foundation. There's, what are the advantages of allowing a residential community versus what are the risks? The risks greatly outweigh the rewards here. So it is something I'm only sort of on board with, but I'll let it go for now. We go to a third interview where things are improving on both sides, between the doctor and the skip. And 4818 has met Kane at this point in 073, and apparently this was a really life-changing experience for the skip, feeling much more confident and much more okay with their situation, and the doctor pitches that we have a program here that's meant to utilize anomalous humanoids like 076 or 3. So that was Abel, and then they tried to bring in Kane instead. Said, I like you. I can't promise anything, but if you're interested, I could recommend you to them. They'd evaluate you, train you, and maybe even deploy you one day. And this is, she wants to be a superhero, so we're maybe giving her that opportunity. And we go to uh, what should be a final interview. It says selected interview 4818/Alpha 9. This would have been an interview between the skip and somebody on the mobile task force. But you click it and it says access denied. Level 4 clearance is required to access this file. Gosh darn it. So we have a lead researcher's update that is saying basically how well things are going. And not only is her morale improving, her loyalty to the Foundation is improving, and with that, her skill within her own anomalous abilities have also been greatly enhanced by the training that she's received. She can generate filaments of photonic matter and weave them into flexible clothing, as well as extend photonic matter generated on exposed skin over clothed areas. She's created statues of photonic matter nearly 2 meters tall and 10,000 lumens in luminosity. And for combat training, she generates swords, whips, shields, and throwing stars. She aspires to create more complex constructs and hopes to one day create photonic machines. And the commander tells me they're also testing to see if she can learn to focus light into laser beams or re-release it at ionizing frequencies, but we haven't been able to so far. And outside of this, the skip is a model site resident. She's never used her newly developed skills to harm other staff or residents, is extremely cordial, and often volunteers to assist others in any way she can. Overall, her presence has greatly brightened up the site, both literally and figuratively. And we have an addendum that says the skip has demonstrated the ability to produce a pair of photonic wings, which computer simulations indicate are capable of sustaining powered flight. It has requested that it be allowed to test these under safe conditions and receive flight training should they prove effective, and permission from Alpha 9 is pending. End article. This one's sweet. I really like this one. It's a cool premise, first off. I like the idea of this. I think I've seen something like this before. The ability to sort of turn photons into a point mass and chain them together and build things with light. But the human element to this is what makes this work. This is it's really solid. I'm a sucker for good dialogue. The dialogue started out a bit iffy, but quickly improved and became very good. And the story that it tells, through the dialogue and through the little updates and addendums is a really nice one. I really enjoy this as being just a pleasant, sweet sort of story. We are a horror writing community first and foremost. They touch on that a little bit of, initially the isolation of, they've been separated from everything that they know, their parents, but at the same time, we are, helping this entity out. We're helping them to help us. Let's not, be naive here. They are potentially a great asset to us. So we are doing what we can to make them comfortable and potentially make them a very useful asset to the Foundation. There's actually a lot to unpack for being, a seemingly simple work. So this is a very easy +1 for me. Well done. Last but not least, my last minute inclusion to this. SCP 3753, titled TKO, and that's spelled TEAKO, by Werillium. Gosh darn it, Werillium, you've gotten me 3 times in 2 weeks. That is absolutely ridiculous. But at the same time, I've said it before, I'll say it again, I do not look at author names when I pick these, so it's possible Werillium's just writing really good stuff these days. So, we have 3753 with an object class of safe and an image on the right that is of what looks to be a tea bag with sort of, how do I want to describe this? It's sealed on 3 sides and the bottom is open. if you've seen big iced tea bags like you would do for like a gallon at a time, they kind of look like those. The procedures indicate that 3753 instances are kept in an airtight box and stored in a climate-controlled item locker. The description, that's the entirety of the procedures, by the way. Store it in a box, stick it in a locker. The description indicates that the SCP-3753 designation denotes 119 unbranded chamomile tea bags in a handmade wooden box. And when a person with an infection or physical ailment prepares 3753 and drinks the resulting tea, they will enter a deep sleep, and when they wake, the subject will forcibly and painlessly expel the offending pathogens or organ from an appropriate orifice. That's ominous. The ejected matter, designated -A, will grow until it reaches the subject's approximate height and sprout 2 arms, and then a boxing bell sound will be audible with no discernible source. -A will proceed to engage the subject in hand-to-hand combat until one of the two submits or is knocked out, and it's unknown how the subject continues to maintain bodily function with these vital organs expelled, but the subjects gain an innate awareness of the skip's effects and usually choose to engage it, because if they are victorious, the -A will shrink until it vanishes in a puff of steam. The subject will fall asleep again, and the removed organs reappear inside the body, and upon waking, they feel total recovery from the illness or ailment, and if they fail to defeat the -A will forcibly re-enter the body and the condition will be unchanged. I love this. You drink the tea, you go to sleep, you expel an organ or virus or something, and then from nowhere, ding ding ding, boxing bell sound. Fight your infection, and if you succeed, you will be cured. It's just the right amount of stupid to be on the main list, without feeling out of place. We have a test log that goes into a couple of subjects, and for example, our first one here, Emma Lister with acute bronchitis, -A manifested as an enlarged virus, and our subject 1, it knocked out the enlarged virus, which dissipated, and Lister reported full cessation of her acute bronchitis symptoms within 8 hours. Then it looks like, at least out of these 5 tests that are shown, we've got about a 60% win rate over the -A. And just a couple of little things. This actually has a bit of an old school feel, this test log. It's a little funny. It is it's one of those, like, things are a little silly, a little funny, but and at the same time this is interesting. Like, here's this is test number 11. An agent that suffers from hypertension and depression. -A manifested as a vascular system in humanoid shape and a brain, and this is the first time we've seen 2 instances form at once. And our agent engaged both instances, shouting profanities. Agent defeats the vascular system, and it demanifested, and proceeded to violently assault the brain with her fists and feet even after it submitted. And later follow-up reported significant alleviation of her hypertonin, consistently higher serotonin levels, and decreased frequency of depressive episodes. And Nunez has repeatedly requested uses of the skip of the teabag. And that's the whole work with these test logs. That's where we end it. It is, we're not. It tickles me, and this apparently is tickling a lot of people, because this thing is not even a day old and it's at plus 67. It's a simple concept. It's executed very well. Sometimes those are the best. Simple concepts executed very well. There will never not be a place for those on the wiki. This thing is, not all that long. Quick read, easy to enjoy, and a very easy +1. With that, we're going to call it week 7. We had a lot of good skips this week. Really enjoyed these 5. Really enjoyed all the stuff we received for Cliche Con, but not gonna lie, a little happy to put it to bed. Want to get on to the next one. We haven't quite decided what the next contest is going to be. There was some rumbling in various staff channels. We're tossing around different ideas. I don't want to. I don't want to be the guy that leaks staff stuff, even for something like a contest. Particularly because I don't think any of it is really decided on at any level. These are people throwing out suggestions. Hey, we haven't done one of these in a while. Hey, what do you think about this? This is ultimately up to community outreach, and those guys do a good job of kind of keeping their finger on the pulse of what would go well. And Cliche Con was a lot of fun. Week 7 was a lot of fun. Looking forward to week 8. I'll see you guys on the 22nd. But before then, next Wednesday, I will give you the big reveal that I've been promising, at least as much as I can. There's a lot of stuff still up in the air, but encourage you to check on the scp.cafe website around Wednesday morning and see what you think. Until then, keep reading, keep writing, and I'll see you then.